Hello, everyone. So today, as you know, I usually discuss books, and today we are privileged to have the author of the book, Bill George. He wrote Home Fields, and I suggest everybody go to Amazon.com, look for Home Fields by Bill George, also homefieldsbook.com, all one word, and go buy this book because I know you will like it, and I know you'll like it because I liked it. And proof of that, I'm not afraid to admit it, I cried. I cried at the ending. I guessed how it was going to end, and I still cried. And welcome to the podcast, Bill.
Thanks. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And
So I don't know if you can guess where I cried, but it was the ending when I'm not going to. Well, you got in the bed with Casper, and you said that it reminded you of when you were a little kid getting in bed with, and that really resonated with me because I have kids now, and that just, waterworks.
well, the book, really is about family caregiving. I tell it from a setting. I was the Coast Guard Academy football coach at the United States Coast Guard Academy for 21 years. And it also covers him as he's dying in hospice care in our house about recalling World War II. And that's kind of the subtitle of the book. Home Fields, Coast Guard Academy football coach, recounts the unfulfilled lives of World War II. So I wrapped up those scenarios. And what you're talking about is a scene near the end, which, we knew he was going, and so many people in our country are caregivers. And that's what happens when you have a family member who's near the end in your home.
Yeah, and that's the thing I like about it. It's very universal. Like you follow that up, which was very touching. There's a lot of very touching parts in the book, but you follow that up with the scene with your mom, Anna, and she's getting ready for church. It's a sunny day, little tiny house. Everybody's getting ready for church. Now, the whole book, she's sort of like gone already, So you're talking about her in the past tense, before, or she is spoken about in the past tense, like, before Anna died, or this and that. But we get to see Anna, and you just, as a reader, you just want time to stop, because, it's your parent, and it's just a moment of just normal life, and the parent is gone. I sort of like, I have a mom. We get ready for church. It's a very universal book.
Well, she was gone at the time of the writing of this book, or the time of this book takes place in 2014. And I just had one conversation in her, and it evolves around my wife and I, who adopted our first and only child very late in life. And I was at that crossroads where, okay, I'm going to go through this adoption late in life with our first and only child, and a newborn infant, and my mother's getting ready for church, and we have a heart-to-heart talk. And so I kind of inserted that back in to bring her back to life, because she was really not alive in the course of this book.
Yeah. And, well, I wanted to say, like, you achieved the goal, I think, of the book, which is the reader, by the end of the book, you care about Casper, you care about Anna, you care about Puppy and Nemo and Don and Martha. You care about all those people. And I think you do this through passing stories. You retell a lot of the stories that you heard from your dad. And so that's one of the motifs that I found in your book, was fathers passing down stories to their kids, telling them over and over and over and over and over and over again. And at the end of it, these people live, even though they might be gone, they're still around in these stories. And that's one of the things that I want my kids to, I want to tell my kids about my dad and my mom, and I want them to live on in my kids' memories. So that's one of the motifs I found in your book. That's a great summary that you have. It's about family stories.
Well,
yeah.
Well, one of the things that, as we start off, and I'll set the setting up, my father moved in with us, and as soon as he moves in with us, his health goes downhill. He's lived in our house with my wife, myself, and my daughter, and she thinks of him as a brother, and he goes into hospice care, and we have to take care of him with much help of many people, and many people go through this as caregivers. But as they cut him off all the meds on hospice, they took away all the meds, his mind cleared up, and he started recalling this little immigrant village along Cayuga Lake, Myers, New York, that he grew up in, and he started recalling people's childhood, and all these people left for World War II. Some came home, and some did not. And so we go, as these young people grow up, what their life was to grow up in innocence. One person was very shy and quiet and a deep thinker. Another one was had a beautiful girlfriend, and he was a great athlete, and his girlfriend had leukemia as he goes off to World War II. And these are all true stories. So I went back and forth with those family stories of people growing up, and again, unfulfilled lives of World War II. So we tell it back and forth each night a little bit as we're going through the caregiving situation. And again, me trying to win this one rivalry football game. So I jump back and forth, but I guess if you say I made you cry, I pulled it off a little bit.
Yeah. So let's see. I tried to read it like critically, which means that what I'm going to say is going to sound really pretentious. So you tell me if it's pretentious. But I think that the book is really about life in the human experience, if you will. That sounds pretty pretentious. But I think that if I had to, like, you have kids, you start thinking like crisis thinking or paranoia, thinking, what if I died? What would I like to impart to my kids? What would I like to teach them about life? And, if I could put it in one book, it would be this book. Because this book is about loss, hardship, death. In one of the parts, Marian's mother dies, and young puppy Moses, he says, the world must be full of never-ending tragedies. There's a lot of tragedies in this book. And part of this book is children slowly learning to handle loss, and maybe even adults to handle the loss of their, adult dad. A big motif of this is untimely deaths, people dying before their time. The puppy, we already talked about this, but the puppy symbolizes, this a symbol of Michael Moses' childhood, dying. And in fact, the whole book is full of symbolism. I mean, the opossum, the leaf in the football game. If you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But the leaf in the football game, I like it. That's you, the leaf.
Yeah,
that was you.
That occurred, and again, not to jump too far ahead of symbolism, but one of the Coast Guard officers and Vice Admiral Sandra Stowes, who was a tremendous help to me to getting the book published, said to me, you've hung yourself out there, you've made yourself an anti-hero, kind of a selfish football coach in a memoir about what you're writing about the meaning of life and so many other things. And what you're talking about is, I was struggling during the one game. It's really only about one football game, and it really isn't much about football. But I had made a couple of bad calls, and there was a leaf on the field. And I thought, look, the leaf is still green. I feel like I'm dying. The rest of the leaves are all dead, and here's this one green leaf, to come comfort me in my thinking about football. But anyway, it is about the meaning of life, and that's what the book is about. And it's about a coach who's surrounded by a lot of people, a wife who takes care of his father, a daughter, the reflections of people who led very short lives back in World War II and very tragic lives. And yet all I in a way, think about is football. So I'm starting to wonder about my meaning of life. Is it just about winning college football games?
Yeah, and so I think even the order in which, like, the puppy dies, and that sort of signifies, like, okay, puppy Moses, Michael Moses, the main character, his childhood is gonna, and it gets like progressively more like, parent of, Atina dies, then, usually if you live through life, right? Usually you're gonna get a hamster or something when you're young, that's gonna die, and then if everything goes right, your grandparents might pass away, and then your parents, and then yourself, and you have to deal with your own death and your relationship with your kids and all that. But the point I'm getting at is every death sort of gradually prepares you for the next one. It's like Puppy Moses losing the race or losing the baseball game. I want my kids to experience loss or gradual sort of disappointments in life so that they can harden, they can toughen up, and each one of them will prepare you to the next thing.
Well, if you if you look at the character Michael Nemo Salim, I mean, he probably wasn't the only person who had a mother that died when he was 14 or 15, and those people all went off to World War II, and at the same time his girlfriend had leukemia in the 1940s. So he had a very tough life. By the time he's 18, he's lost his mother, his girlfriend has leukemia, and he's going off to World War II. So, and I'm sure there are probably a lot of stories like that, but that's true. And I tried to, show his character and the character of the others. His best friend was nicknamed Michael Puppy Moses, and he was a shy, quiet, deep thinker. And, so Nemo wanted to go on and become a doctor. Puppy Moses wanted to, didn't know what he wanted to do, but he thought about the meaning of life a lot.
And the other reason why I think it's about the meaning of life and the human experience, I think, is because another motif of your book is stages of life, right? So there's the childhood, the story arc of Puppy Moses, and they're like the little rascals, they make the story magical, really, like Mark Twain, like St. Petersburg, Missouri in Mark Twain books is a magical place because of Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. And likewise, these kids, in one scene, they're trying to baptize a puppy, and then you juxtapose that with adulthood, meaning you as an adult, coaching, having responsibilities, having to take care of your dad in hospice, and then there's the other stage of life, which is old age, which is characterized by Casper in his old age. And I like how you sort of alternate, jump between. It kept it entertaining. Now, the other thing that I found in your book is it's juxtaposing dying of old age, dying early, right? Dying before your time, untimely deaths. But then, on the other hand, you have Casper, who made it alive. He had his wish of living a long life, and it reminded me of Arthur Schopenhauer. He had a book, Studies in Pessimism. And he described old age as, old age is when things are bad today, and tomorrow they're going to be worse. Old age is our goal, but it's not heaven either. It's tough.
No, and in his case, the memories came more alive. He had told me the stories before, but, it's the same thing. Why am I here and these people were gone so long ago? Why am I the only one left? And that's probably what a lot of people, hear. You're right. You face, he knows, that he's getting old, that he has to be taken care of. But his mind became clearer. Like many people who are older, Casper was physically failing, but for some reason his mind got clearer, and I attribute it to the way they cut out all the meds once you go on hospice. And in many cases, other people are physically strong. I mentioned my old football coach, Jim Butterfield from Ithaca College, who was eaten alive by Alzheimer's, yet his body stayed very strong. Well, Casper was the opposite. So with that came the thoughts of, why am I here? His mind was still strong, and of course the memories, and you start thinking back of everyone who you've lost from decades ago till just recently. So,
and that was another motif. That's a good segue to another motif that I found in your book is the precariousness of life. Right, the whole book, Casper is his mind's kind of going, and so he's rambling about this and that. And you, as a reader, you really want him to make sense. Like, oh, it's very profound what he said. Like, he said this or that, and you're like, no, he's saying something profound. Most of the time it was like, just his mind was tired. But you end one chapter, I think it was page 186, where he talks about the precariousness of life. What you mentioned, just he asked, why did Anna's brother drown when they were little? Why didn't Anna drown? And it could have been just as well her. Why did my brother live and his friend die in Syria? They were little kids. They were playing with a bomb, and the kid exploded. And he brings this point up of why do bad things happen to this person, but we survive life? And I think the reason is that the whole point of that, I think, and you can correct me, that menial life, just quotidian, everyday, boring old life, having to put sunblock on your aging dad, just the everyday emotions, that's precious. Those moments are precious because they could be gone at any moment.
Yeah, I know the part you're talking about, and it really is him starting to question me as I'm taking care of him. Now he comes alive and he says, well, why did God choose this? Why did God have what is fate? Why does one child drown and not another? Which happened? Why does two kids playing with a bomb they found, one explodes and one dies and the other child survives? Who chooses that? Who makes it? Is it fate? Why did God decide these things? Is kind of what he's asking. So he's now questioning, life in general. Why do these things happen? Who chooses this? Who makes it? Is there a God up there choosing this? It just can't be fate. Why these things happen? And so that's kind of where he comes alive in that. There's another thing in there where two of the young men, I believe it's 1942, and they're, I think, in their senior year of high school, or it's the winter of December of 42. They're going into 43 for their senior year of high school, and they're standing on a frozen creek looking down at the ice, and one says to the other, time is moving like that creek below us. And the other one says, well, what do you mean it's moving like the creek below us? The ice is frozen. We don't see time move, but underneath it, that water is moving, and so is time. And so I think those are things that come along as you reach that age again.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue to another motif I found in your book, which is there are these three storylines three stages of life, right? Childhood, adulthood, and old age. But there's a fourth story arc, which we see glimpses of, and that's the 4-star families that come up to you. The point I'm getting at is there's a war in the background. Sometimes we see it in your book when Casper talks about the war in Syria. We see it through TV. Sometimes we see it in the faces of the star families, Gold Star families. Sorry, the Gold Star families that approach you and talk about the reality is we go on with our lives, but there's a war in the background. People are dying at war or through anything, and so. Yeah.
I spent 21 years as the head football coach and a faculty instructor at the United States Coast Guard Academy. And it's a branch of service, and people die in the service of our nation. And I talk about one player who died for me and one player's brother who died for me again. So that's a fact of life. When you're at a National Service Academy for that many years, you're going to cross paths with tragedy of former people you've taught and coached and those things. And that's, the Gold Star families. We had a Gold Star game. In fact, we had a game once where they brought back a former Coast Guard player who had died in the Philippines in a POW camp. And we dedicated that game to him. And that was 2014, and he died in 1940, I think, or 41 after the Philippines fell. So.
Is that the one? It's not is it in your book?
Yes.
Is it the one where they try to find a kid who looks like him?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And here it is. It's 50 years later, and the Boston Globe did a big article on that game and that player, and the family who lost this person, and again, they only knew him through pictures, is trying to find somebody on my football team who looks like him 60 years later after he died in a POW camp in the South Pacific.
Well, I mean, this is the thing about it. Like, thanks to your book, Puppy Moses, that kid, Nemo, they're done. They're immortalized, through stories. Now we remember them. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is, early on, I read an article where World War II is still very, very popular. And I'm not a person that could write a historical book. I'm not a researcher. But I read an article where someone said, it's still so popular, but someone has to come at it from a different angle that hasn't been. And so I kind of came at it from these people growing up, how they were, what all the research and people I talked to and how they knew them. So I came at it from that angle, from their lives, growing up and young and then going off to war, more than from the war part of it itself.
Yeah, I can see that. So another motif I'd say is just honor thy father and mother. Take care of the elderly. Be patient with them. It's pretty horrific. Like just getting old. I mean, what do you think? Like, are you afraid it'll happen to you someday?
Well, I think I even hint to it in the book because I'm in my 50s, and I think there's a scene where we're watching the Willy Wonka movie. The original Willy Wonka movie, and there was a scene where all the parents are living together in one room, and I'm looking over, and at that time I'm 56, my father's 87, and here's my 4-year-old daughter. And I'm like, shall we live in that? But the caregiving, so many people go through it at all kinds of levels, and you don't think you can do certain things, and you do because you have no other choice, and you love your family, and so. We did some things in the book that I would say we never could do, caregiving, and at the same time, other people say they can't do them, they would do them, and so many people, I think it's like 40-50% of the country is involved in caregiving of an elderly person in one way or the other. I think that kind of sums it up. We're in that situation where you look at age and you're taking care of somebody, but you realize, maybe I'm not that far off.
Yeah. And so like I said in the beginning, like I do think that this book really encapsulates the human experience and what I want to impart to my kids. If I had only one book to recommend to them or something like that, take care of your parents. Enjoy just the mundane life. You could die at any moment. Just enjoy life and appreciate your parents and stuff like that. Another thing I found in your book that I want to impart to my kids, or I think it's important for people to realize, Puppy Mose is always just nature, appreciating nature. Puppy Mose is always looking over the bridge or at the water or at the clouds. Now, here's the thing that surprised me about your book. You're a football player. You were a football player in college. You're a football coach. You taught self-defense, and not just a football coach. You're a football coach for the Coast Guard. Like, this is like as manly as you can get. But I read your book, it's about sunsets, puppies, clouds.
We're all human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all people. I mean, being a coach at the Coast Guard Academy was probably the greatest job on the face of the earth, and I got to do it for 1999 to the fall of 2019, and then I retired. But it's a different. I'm not sure I could have been a football coach anywhere but the United States Coast Guard Academy for 21 years. So maybe they had something to do with it. But we all have different sides to us. So. So what's the significance? You appreciate. It seems from your book you appreciate nature, and at one point in your book you wrote that you were staring at, I think it was the clouds or some part of nature, maybe, I don't know, the forest or something, the lake. And it reminded you of the life that you feel you had lost from worrying about work. What's the significance of your appreciation in nature that you mentioned so much in your book? Well, I think, first off, that one of the things that one of the people who came home, Gus Isaacs, who's still 100 years old and went off to World War II and fought in 3 invasions, and was best friends with all these people and is in the book. He said something to me last summer at his 100th birthday party that when he left for war, he had never left this little town of Myers, and that he had never watched TV, and so maybe people looked around and looked at the clouds, and that was their entertainment every day, and maybe they looked at the sunsets, and that's what they saw because they didn't have TV and they didn't drive or go to cars, and so life around them was simpler, and the beauty of life was simpler. That's kind of one thing in that. The other thing I think is, I think when you coach college football or anything, any person can do it. You could say you're running a business. You become consumed with, the day-to-day success and what you're doing and what's the next game, and what's going on next. And, you just don't look around. You're so consumed with work. And I think that occurs for a lot of people. And so that's kind of what I was, trying to get to. What else is there besides, this obsession of football, and which is my job. I understand that. We all have our jobs, but I think maybe to notice the beauty that's around you,
Hmm. Now, like I mentioned before, so again, maybe I'm projecting, but a lot of like life lessons or stuff like that. And like I said, failure was a big part of the book. There's Puppy Moses. He just wants to not even win the race, just get ahead of one other person. Or he's got all bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, and he's up to bat. And failure is a big part of life, and it's something that everybody must go through. And it's a lesson that everybody must learn. It's a great teacher. I can tell my kids, hey, I don't know, if a girl breaks up with you, get over it. Or I can tell them, hey, it's okay if you don't win the big game or whatever. But until they experience that, there's some things you just can't teach. And it's like the meaning of life or the human experience. You mention something, you try to articulate it. You mention one aspect of it, you forget two. It's very hard to encapsulate or articulate put into words. So Puppy Moses losing the baseball game, did you add, you're like into sport, you're a coach.
Yeah, he wasn't as much as I knew about him.
Okay.
Was not a gifted athlete. He did have a rounder, soft face, and I just uncovered a nice military photo of him. He had a gentle personality to him. His brothers were built a little stockier and more solid, but also he ran the mile race. There weren't that many events to do in track, and there weren't that many sports back then in a little tiny high school back in the 1940s. So somehow there was only like 4 events, and somehow he ended up a mile runner, which I thought was odd. But then as I've talked to people through the time, they've also said, yeah, I ended up a mile runner and I couldn't run. So he did. One of the things my father said to me was he finished last in every single race. He never beat a single runner. Why did he run the mile? And that's, he just didn't quit. He just kept running. So I think there is some failure in sport. And again, he did look, he refers to Lou Gehrig in the book a lot, saying, Lou is so handsome and invincible. And of course, we all know Lou Gehrig ended up not invincible, but he wishes, he put that baseball uniform on so he could be invincible. And, also his best friend is Michael Salim, whose girlfriend is beautiful Dawn Wursel, who's got leukemia, but he's in love with Michael Salim's sister, his best friend's sister, and he can't ever say that to her throughout his life. He's too shy, he's too quiet, he's too concerned of his looks. And so these people go off to war, one shy and quiet who can't express his love, and the other one who's, handsome, has got the beautiful girlfriend, but she's struggling with her own health. So I use those two. There are other people in the book, many who come home and many who do not, as we know from World War II, that many people don't come home. But I wanted to use their personalities, their contrasting personalities. And, I may have recreated a conversation here or two, but man, I'll tell you, I got a lot of stuff from a lot of people, and that's how it filled out through the years. And I had heard stories about this before. It's just,
Okay, so in page 7, Takla tells Puppy Moses, I'll visit you in your dreams, or basically she says, long after I'm in heaven, you will know I love you, even in heaven.
Well, I wanted her to introduce her. Takla is his mother, pronounced, it's Tutla, but it's spelled Takla. But it's funny, I went through the translation of it. Michael Puppy Moses is sleeping. He's 12 years old, and that's kind of how within the first chapter it comes about. And she tiptoes in and she kisses him as he's sleeping, and she says to him, you're sleeping, but this dream, this kiss is going to get trapped in your dreams or in your heart. And long after I'm gone and long after I'm in heaven, you're going to have a dream about me, and you're going to feel that kiss, and you'll wake up in the middle of the night and you'll know I'm in heaven, but you'll know I really still love you even from heaven. And so that's kind of how I wanted to introduce, a mother's love, or, a young man, the innocence of an immigrant family, an immigrant village just coming here to survive, and that love. So
the way I read it was, if I had a message for my kids. Let's say I got in a car accident. Again, crisis thinking. It's not going to happen, knock on wood. But the message that every parent has to their kid, their dying message, I love you. That's the most succinct way to express what you want them to take away from your existence, I think. That's how I read it.
Yeah, and it is, and that's, we all question, and there's a lot of questions in the book about going to heaven and what happens after this. And, we all want to believe we're going to see everyone again. We want to believe. And there's people who tragically lose their children, even in this book, and they want to believe they're going to see them again. And there's people that lose parents and everything, and kind of love for our loved ones, love for our families kind of goes above everything else and becomes a stronger emotion than anything else. And in that book, I wanted to express that we all want to, we all love people. We all want to see our loved ones.
Yeah. Did Tatla, that's how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Was she really in denial?
Well, I don't want to get too much into telling everything to readers, but yeah, everything about that was true. She struggled with sending sons off to World War II. It affected her deeply mentally, and she never recovered. And that's part of what probably happened to a lot of mothers who send children off to war. Remember, she sent 3 sons off to war. Now, 2 of them only one is really the main character of the book. But also, Michael Salim's family sends their brother off to war. Now, again, I only made certain characters the main people, but they're off to war. So, yes, she was mentally harmed, I guess is the best way. She did not recover from World War II.
And without giving away anything, but the glasses, were they bloody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you're referring to, that's a true story. It's in the book, but one of the families returned, the belongings were returned to the family right there in Myers, New York, on the little Syrian Hill, the little immigrant village. And when they opened up the return package, the glasses that he had been wearing were bloody.
Yeah, there were that scene, the flood of Cayuga Lake.
Yeah, the flood was big in the 30s. In fact, I've had a couple of people contact me that were also affected in the whole central New York or Pennsylvania that have read the book and said, the flood, and this was just one of them, and it's true, it's a tragic flood. That was probably something because my father witnessed these people being washed away right in front of his eyes when he was, I think at the time he might have been 7, 8 years old. And I think he was about 8. So when it happened, that stayed with him. It caused great depression his whole life to watch children washed away as this bridge just washes away. And that's all true. It happened. And it happened a lot. It rained for 3 straight days in 1935 from, I think it was July 4th straight through to the 7th. But there's a lot of tragic stories about the flood in central New York all over, not just this little one I wrote about, but in Pennsylvania and throughout the East.
Oh. Yeah, that was one of the scenes. That was a big scene, very emotive, and just seeing your kid floating for 2 days, you can't get to it, the dead body, you can't.
Well, you're referring to what happened was 2 of the boys on the bridge were washed away, and one of the people next to the bridge, as this massive flood carries this bridge away, a father of 2 of the boys jumps in after them, and so all 3 are washed out to Cayuga Lake.
That was harrowing,
yeah. But one of the boys' body got trapped within the metal frame of the bridge, and so when the water receded, he was stuck within this bridge, and they couldn't retrieve him. It's 1935. They didn't have that kind of gear, and they had to wait till the water, and so this body is stuck there with people just staring at it for 2 days.
Wow. So, your book reminded me a little bit of The Godfather. This is just a little, the scene where, I won't say who, but somebody sort of has a silent yell, silent cry. Nothing comes out. It reminded me of Al Pacino when his daughter died, couldn't get the sound out. The final scene, sort of after everything is done, and you get to the final scene where everybody's together, ice skating. That sort of, to me, it reminded me of the Godfather. It was like a flashback,
Well, and it was a little bit of a flashback in the book because I went back in time a little to before all. I kind of took a gamble there and went back with the last scene with a memory of before all this happened, before the flood, before World War II, when everybody was just ice skating and getting ready to go to school and play baseball and have fun in life. And maybe that's the way it was in 1935. And then, so I went back to that one scene when they were all alive and recreated that a little bit. And that's kind of, maybe we all long for childhood, and maybe these people, many who in that scene are still alive and many who are not, either because of the flood or because of World War II. So I gave them one last shot, I guess, to maybe breathe and ice skate.
Yeah. So again, like one of the big motifs is untimely deaths. One thing that is repeated a lot, page 107, Puppy Moses says, "You die who you are, or you die who you're not." If you were to, Bill, if you were to die today, would you die who you are? And then the final question: did Casper die who he was? I don't think he did.
I kind of went back and forth that in that scene, they're talking because they're talking about a death, the two young men, and he says, you said, we die who we are or we die who we are not. And he keeps questioning him, what did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? And he says, I think, maybe I should have said we die who we are and who we are not instead of or. And he goes on to say, maybe it's not or, maybe we don't want, maybe what we don't finish here, we finish in this next life. Maybe, we die who we are and who we are not. I should not have used the word or. That's kind of what he's explaining to him. It was a couple years ago. I was a young kid when I said that. And now I'm a little bit older. I'm thinking I should have used the word and, kind of referring to maybe we do something after this. Like maybe our life doesn't end here. Maybe there's something we get to do in heaven that makes life better for people here on earth.
I see. Well, thanks, Bill. That's all the time. And
thank you very much. I hope people read it. Homefield's a Coast Guard Academy football coach, recounts the unfulfilled lives of World War II. Many thanks to Vicki Fulkerson, editor of the New London Day, who helped me. And many thanks to Admiral Sandra Stowe, who also helped me. Vice Admiral Stowe helped me a great deal getting a publisher. So thank you.
Yeah, homefieldbooks.com and Amazon. Thank you.